Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to ask everybody of you is English speaking, I guess. So, I thought I'd do this in German, but now I do it in English. I hope you don't mind that the slides are in German, but I will explain what we are doing as Invidis Consulting and what the topic of the presentation is. First of all, my name is Oliver Schwede from Invidis Consulting. We're a consultancy based in Munich and specialized in digital signage consultancy for end customers, commercial customers, and we're also doing some consulting work for suppliers. In my presentation today, I would like to stress some topics about the procurement process. At the moment, when I look at digital signage and how it's planned and deployed, it's often not very strategic and it's not very well planned. So what we see from the German-speaking market. And our objective or our goal is to convince customers to save a little bit of the money they normally spend in digital hardware and software and to put this in consultancy in the beginning. And after the presentation, hopefully you will see why this makes sense from our point of view. To deploy digital signage, or when we think about digital signage, it's always about communication. And unfortunately, digital signage projects are located often in the IT departments. So marketing doesn't know about digital signage, and somebody says, okay, we need something with displays in our retail stores or in our outlets, and it's been passed to the IT department because it's a screen, it's a player, it has to do with networks, and the marketing people always say, okay, this is stuff for the IT department. So the IT project manager comes up, makes a Google search, and then often comes up with a certain software, with a certain media player, with a certain idea how to set up digital signage from a technological point of view. And from our point of view, this is a big mistake because it's about, in the first place, about communication. And we try to step in and try to convince the customers to wait with a decision about the final solution and first think about communication objectives. Because when you look at digital signage, as one side is procurement hardware software and the rollout, and the other thing is, and which is more important, is the content which is displayed. I don't want to say content is king, but the concept behind it is king. The marketing people who at the end operate digital signage and have to give in new ideas what to show to potential customers, they need to know what these systems are capable to produce, how to use interactivity, what to do with interactivity, how to present certain products and brands and communication messages. And at the end of the day, they need to measure what they are doing at the point of sale, point of information. And this, in the first place, is not part of the IT planning, but it's part of a communication planning, a communication concept which needs to be set up. And as there is no dedicated person in larger corporates who are involved in digital signage or responsible for digital signage, it's our first task to ask potential or the customers who are the stakeholders of digital signage. Is it only marketing or is it also facility management? Are there salespeople involved? Is this something which was decided from the board? Who is operating the digital signage system for the next 3 to 5 years? And who is doing the maintenance? So these are major topics where we say, okay, we need all these people around one table, and then we want to discuss with them what is their vision about digital signage. So first of all, we need all stakeholders to decide in which direction we want to go before we start talking about technology and software and the other things which normally are in the beginning of a digital signage system. We also need to talk about functionality. What does the customer expect what the digital signage system should do at the end of the day? We need to talk about processes and usability. And this is a very important point because when you today look at digital signage software, it's nearly always an out-of-the-box solution. So you get a software, you get a user interface, there are certain processes behind it, and these normally do not match with the processes larger corporates have. So if you think about content delivery, who is doing this? Is this done internally or is this done by an agency? Who is looking at the contents and approving them? Who puts them into the content and how do you adjust when the content is played out, at what place, at what time, and when maybe this content has to stop playing out? This is all on the process and usability and workflow interface. And of course we have to talk about hosting, services, and operation. Our customers have a self-hosted digital signage system, or do they rely on a service supplier who is doing all the hosting in a data management center, and who will swap and replace screens and defect hardware players? So it's a very complex setup, I would say, in order to have a final digital signage solution which fits your demand and requirements. So how do we start? First of all, I have made a checklist. Unfortunately, as I said, this is in German, but I can provide this to you if you're interested. We have to define the communication issues. The communication issues and objectives are not always the same. Some people try to use digital signage to increase the frequency in the retail stores. Others want to steer and drive sales or increase the basket size, and others want to increase the customer loyalty. So these are totally different objectives, and this has to be defined. And from this beginning, we say, okay, what is your target group? Is it the young people using mobile phones? Are these the older people who maybe only look at screens and hesitate to touch the screen? So we need to know to what kind of target group you want to communicate to. It's nearly the same with all media if you look at print magazines or online portals. So it's always about the content and the target group. And then you have to define what do you want to achieve with this. As I said in the beginning, maybe there is an increase of frequency in retail stores. If this is your objective, your goal, how do you measure this? Because at one point, after maybe 1 or 2 years, you have to explain your boss or the controlling, why did you invest so much money, hundreds and thousands of euros, in deploying digital screens, but what are the effects on it? So you have to start in the beginning defining your KPIs and to think about how to measure this. There are a lot of systems out there for retail analytics to measure frequency, customer flows, to match the cashier data with the content you are showing at the moment, so that you can back up your defined KPIs with hard, solid numbers, and then explain why you decided to invest in digital signage. From this, I would say, rough setup of target groups and communication objectives, it comes to the program. It's like on a TV show, you have a program, and you have to think, what do I communicate at what time? So who is providing the content? We have different content sources for larger corporates. Most of these are based in external agencies, creative agencies, which normally do not have any experience with digital signage. They're very good in creating digital artworks for magazines, for print, for online, but most of them don't have any experience in creating content for digital signage. So how do these movies or animations have to be created? What kind of codecs do you use? What's the size of the files you are pushing through the digital signage network? What are the quality criteria? When people start in digital signage, thinking in digital signage is mostly about one screen. But at the moment we see, especially in the retail sector, that a lot of media walls are deployed. So large numbers of screens in one wall showing one movie, one picture. And at that moment we have to talk about picture quality. So is it sufficient and enough to have a standard definition quality? For sure not. Full HD is at the moment the standard, but is this efficient to drive a 3x3 video wall or a 4x4 wall? So then you have to think about 4K content, and with 4K comes the question, is the player, the source, able to play this 4K content in a quality you expect? Talking about live renderings, a lot of companies say, okay, we want the content to be triggered. Triggered means if the weather outside is good, I want to push something else, or I want to show the weather in Cologne and in Munich. So this is always, or was in the past, Flash-based content. Nowadays it shifts to HTML5 content. But of course, the player needs to be capable to show these kind of content and render it live on the screen. And if you start with we show only JPEGs or only movies, and then you have full HD Flash content or HTML5 content, maybe the player is not capable to show this. The same with 4K. There are only a few players out there who have a hardware decoder on board who can flawlessly and without jitter show 4K content on digital screens. So we have to talk about the content. We have to talk about formats of photos, videos, animation. We have to decide, have we a multi-zone layout on one screen, or is it just a full screen we want to show? Or should the contents be located, like I mentioned before, like the weather in Munich, the weather in Cologne, the weather in Hamburg? Do we want to use templates to reduce the cost for content creation? That's a very important factor. Most of the people only think in hardware and software investments and in operations, but they are not aware that a digital signage system normally lasts from 3 to 5 years, and within the 3 to 5 years, you need a lot of content to push your brands to achieve your communication objectives. And so we always say to a customer, be aware that you have to have a budget for constant content creation. And on one hand, you can do this or say, okay, the content should be built by a creative agency, which they are very happy to do, but costs a lot of money. Or you think we're investing in creating templates where it's very easy to produce new contents because you only push new pictures, new movies, new text in a given template, and this is animated and rendered in real time, so it reduces the cost of digital signage content dramatically. And of course, things like approval of contents. When you have an external agency or even within the marketing department, there's one guy or one woman creating this content. But it would be false to say, okay, everything which is created instantly is deployed or published in the digital signage network. So you need certain approval steps, where there's one person responsible and has to approve that the content can be published. And to at least interactive content. When you look at interactive screens, it looks very easy. You have a picture which you can touch, and then other content is then triggered and played out. This can be done with a software based on templates, or if it's more complicated content, it's often Flash applications are used. Then we have to consider, is the hardware able to run this kind of Flash interactive application with the desired quality and the result behind it? From the content view, we then come to the technical concept. And as I mentioned before, the performance of the media player is very crucial. When you think about a digital signage project where hundreds of retailers are equipped with screens and media players, it's a lot of effort to replace these media players when you suddenly see that these players are not able to play the new content. So what are you going to do? You replace hundreds of media players in the field out there. Maybe in a pan-European project, you go out there, you have your service teams out there swapping these players. That costs too much money. And this is very important to define at the beginning, what do we want to show? Is it interactive? Is it Flash-based? Is it HTML-based? Should it be able to show 4K, to choose the right hardware? The same with integration in furniture. We more and more see that digital signage is not like a hang and bang one screen with a player behind it, but it's more often integrated into the retail furniture. So you have to think about thermal issues. Does the player have enough room in there? Is there enough ventilation so it doesn't become too hot? What about the swap if something fails, a player fails or a display fails? How easy is it for the technicians out there in the field to replace one screen or one player? These are all considerations which go into the technical concepts. And another thing, because a lot of people think about using retail analytics based on anonymous video analytics, like you put in a video camera on top of digital signage screens, and then you can identify the people by their gender, by their age, if they're smiling, and other criteria. So, for instance, in Germany, this is an issue with data privacy laws we have here in Germany. So not everybody is aware that it's in every place it's not always allowed to collect this data, even if it's anonymous. So we have to consider this by rolling out a bit bigger projects. It comes down to user and user rights. There's not only one guy running this digital signage system. For instance, you have a central marketing which puts in the digital signage content and passes this to other marketing departments in different countries and says, okay, you have to adapt these contents, and maybe it comes down to the retailer, to the store manager who is able to manipulate this content by providing different prices or just to choose when to play what. So there is a very complicated user rights system should be behind it, which makes sure that each of the users can only address or can use the contents he is allowed, and can only make these changes to the content which are defined in the beginning. We have processes and usability. As I mentioned before, the digital signage software at the moment, we can see it in two different parts. So one is an out-of-the-box solution, which is mostly very, very cheap. You just install it. You have a central CMS. You have a web login, and we have one user face, maybe for different roles, for the technician, for the administrator, for the marketing people. But when you look at these user interfaces, it's still very, very complicated. And everybody of you who has used the CMS knows that this can be really a pain, especially if you're not using this on a daily basis, but maybe you only look into the system once a week or once a month. So we often come to customers or see customers say, okay, this is all too complicated and we need kind of a web interface, like a middleware, which makes it so much easier for the people to fulfill their task by just clicking a couple of buttons, or to have wizards in there which shows them what they should do with a digital signage system. And this is normally part of the digital signage integrator when he uses not an out-of-the-box solution, but more like a software architecture which is flexible in defining processes, changing the user interfaces, and giving the whole software a totally another look and feel which the customer pleases, and where he says, okay, we can use this in the next 3 to 5 years. Another thing is hosting. We have totally different kind of companies in Germany. The small and medium companies often tend to say, we want to host everything by our own. So we have our IT guy, and we have enough computing power there, and we have a data center. We can host this by our own. This makes sense if you have only a couple of outlets, but when it comes to large retailers which deploy digital signage on a base of hundreds of retail outlets, or even through different countries, you really have to think if this is your core business, or if you should not ask a service provider, a big service provider, to host your software, to play in all the updates, to guarantee you the stability of the systems, the performance, and of course that it's for 99.9% working during the week, during the year. So hosting is crucial, and of course it makes a big difference when it comes to cost. If you buy your software on premise, so you upfront pay all the license fees, or is this maybe a rental-based digital signage software when you say, okay, we are opening new stores every 2 months or every month, and so we need to be flexible. And at one point, one store closes, so it makes sense to have a flexible license model, to shift licenses, or to reduce this, or to increase the size of the license to reduce the overall costs. Another point is installation and operations. It's false or it's a narrow mistake to think that the retail landscape out there is from from a perspective of one company, everything is the same. Everybody has a dedicated DSL or internet connection. You have the electrical plugs on the specific place. So from our experience, retail stores, concepts and layouts are totally different, and the same with technology. So you can't be sure that there is a dedicated DSL, that you have DHCP running. Some retailers really use static IP addresses, and this all makes it very, very complicated for the installation team to deploy the digital signage system in time and based on the amount of money you have calculated per installation. So it makes really sense to think how easy is it to install a media player, to put in all the correct data, where it's located, at what retail store, at what location, in what city. All this stuff has to be done. And there are different approaches to this. Of course, you can do this within the distribution in the logistical center, where the players are pre-filled or fueled with the software, and all the data can be put in prior to installation. But sometimes this is not possible. So you just push out the players, it's pre-installed, but you don't have specific retail data inside. So what you're going to do? The installation guy needs maybe he needs a keyboard, he needs a mouse, he needs internet connection, stuff like that. And you need to make sure that he's equipped with all this equipment, or has this equipment during the installation to program this player. And sometimes this is a big issue. And same with service level agreements. Of course, everybody says in the beginning, we want 99.9% uptime. But this is really important, because that makes all the difference in terms of pricing. If you say, okay, it's maybe not crucial that a display goes black or just plays the default content, or maybe when the content of the last week is played out, it's not crucial for the business. You can reduce this service level agreements to a minimum and save a lot of money during the project. And the same with support and service. Who is going out and does all the swap or fixes technical issues? What about the hotlines? Do you need hotlines in 2 languages, 5 languages, 18 languages? Who is doing the service and support in Russia, not maybe in Moscow, but 500 kilometers more to the east? Who is going to do this? Who can provide this kind of service infrastructure to guarantee that your digital signage project is running the next 3 to 5 years? And there are huge difference, and of course huge difference in pricing at the end of the day. When we talk about with the customer about all these issues, and we talk about technical issues with the IT department, we talk about usability, and content creation with the marketing people. We talk maybe about software integration when content should be played out on an automatically based, because it's connected to a CRM or RP system. We collect all this and try to give this a structure which makes it possible to send out an RFP to different suppliers out there. And this structure is based on the amount of outlets and touch points do you have. Sometimes people start saying, okay, if we equip all our retail outlets with digital signage, this maybe are 15,000 outlets European-wide. These are good figures and numbers, but in reality it always starts with a couple of hundred digital signage players which are then deployed, and then the project evolves, and the different markets then start ordering the digital signage system. So it's not in the beginning that we have to roll out 15,000 screens, but this is on a time scale of maybe 12 to 24 months. So this has to be taken into consideration. And then we want to provide the supplier the communication concept, so they know what are the use cases, what are the touch points. Is it in the storefront, or is it a welcome board in the corporate? Is this a touch-enabled device on the shelf? Do we use smaller shelf displays, electronic shelf labels? Do we have video walls? What kind of video walls or media walls? What is the program concept? How often is the content updated, which is important, of course, for the bandwidth, and when do I do all the updates? Is it every night? Is that possible? We had cases where the power was shut down during night, so it was not possible to update all the content during nighttime or off time of the stores. So this is important for the supplier to really shape their offer to the customer. We need, besides a technical concept and the use cases, a security concept. So what happens if there is problems with a database or with players? Are there backups? Can these backups be rolled out? For what kind of backups do we need? Is it on a daily base, on a weekly base? How far are these backups played out to the players? And of course, operations. How complicated should it be to run this digital signage system? And I think this is the most crucial factor, because then we talk about software integration. I said in the beginning there are out-of-the-box solutions, but there are a lot of other solutions which can be highly customized. And of course, from an integrator, these are good revenues, but he has to know what kind of customization is needed. Is it just only some modification of existing source code, or do I need to program new user interfaces? Do I have to program a totally new back-end system to make sure that operations and usability match the expectations of the customers? And of course, the hosting concept. And all this goes into an RFP, which is very structured, which can be 50 to 70 pages, and where we say, okay, we help the customer to send this out. We shortlist then the possible suppliers, because when you look at the digital signage market, you have dozens of software suppliers, you have a lot of integrators out there, you have billions of media players out there, you have choices of different tier 1 or tier A display suppliers. And we have to make sure that this is not an endless process, that there are 20 people pitching about this project. We want to make sure that there is a short list of people who have proved in the past that they have deployed digital signage in this certain area where the customer is actually working. And from this, we come then to the proof of concept. This is one thing to write everything down in a structured way so that all the offers are comparable to the procurement department, but it's also important to see if the people are really capable of doing all the customization. And the proof of concept, how we do it, is always divided into two parts. So we have a technical part where we talk with the IT department about all the hosting, the security issues, the bandwidth, player setup, whatsoever. And then we have another part which is totally marketing and operation focused, where we say, okay, how do we set up a system which can be operated by the marketing team on a daily basis? How do you do this customization? Do you have any examples how you did it in the past? So it's totally divided in two very important parts, and it makes it very efficient for the project owner and the project manager to decide who of these shortlisted integrators are at the end of the day capable of providing this kind of solution. And with this, with a proof of concept, when we look, I have mostly 6 to 8 appointments with different supplier and supplier teams. We often demand a setup of general contractor who guarantees all the financials and has a financial stability. In Germany, for instance, when you work with large corporates, the T-system is often used because they have already existing client business, have existing client business there, and so the client often said, okay, we have good experience with T-systems, so we want to work with them as a general contractor. On the other side, we need a capable digital signage integrator, because the T-system is a large corporate and they're not specialized in digital signage. So we tend to say, okay, we have the general contractor. On the other side, we have a digital signage integrator who has proven in the past that he can customize software, that he can deploy, and these kind of digital signage projects. So this is what we are seeking for the customer, and which we then invite to come to the proof of concept. And after that, it goes to supplier ratings. We have checklists which they have to fill out about references. We look at the different use cases they present, how they did it maybe at for other customers, or when in an ideal world they have already set up a use case for this certain customer. We look at the functions of the CMS and the functions of the media player and ask them, so what are your ideas for installation and rollout? How do you think this can be done most flawlessly? We look at security concepts, services and operations. And after such proof of concepts, after these meetings with 6 to 8 potential suppliers, we try to put this in a matrix and where we rate the different suppliers in the different modules. And with this, the customer then can decide which is the best supplier for his digital signage project. So what I want to say here is that it makes definitely sense for larger digital signage projects to invest in consulting, maybe not invest in us, in Invidis Consulting, where there are other consultants out there, but to start with a very structured view on digital signage. Not start with a media player, do not start with a display, but with a concept. And from the concept, try to incorporate all the people who are involved in the digital signage project, and then ask them about their visions, prioritize them and say, okay, this can we do now within the next year, and the other things can be done maybe in the next 2 to 5 years, because digital signage first has to be in place, and then we can play with this. We can put in interactivity, we can enhance the content, we can work with retail analytics. To start with all this in the beginning is, for most of the people, is way too much and too complicated. And to be honest, it's a very new media. Even that a lot of people talk about digital signage or talked about this 10 to 15 years ago, there are not that much experience out there. And it's, for our point of view, it's very important to start very easy with a very robust and solid system where everybody sees, okay, we have certain effects with digital signage, and then involve this system and say, okay, now we make it more sophisticated, now we do our own integration stuff. But in order to do so, we have to define this in the beginning and make sure that the solutions we board are capable for all this integration process and for all the functions we define in the future. So this is what I wanted to tell you from a consulting point of view. If you want to stay in contact, you will find me on Xing or LinkedIn. My name is Oliver Schwede. You can visit invidis.de. There we have a website which has daily news about digital signage projects, products in Germany, Austria and Switzerland. Or if you want to learn more about digital signage, we have also the Digital Signage Summit Europe, 11th in September in Munich, at the Munich airport. And you can feel free to collect one of the magazines I brought with you. These are our yearbooks, which provides you an overview over the digital signage industry in Germany, Austria and Switzerland. Thank you for your time.